Marilyn Whitney, Superintendent Ibarra's Deputy for Communications and Policy. Welcome. Thank you for your time. We have a pretty packed agenda, lots of information to share again today, and so we're going to move through that quickly. I do want to let you know that if we don't get to all your questions during the webinar, we will follow up with you. So go ahead and keep asking those questions. We just might not get to them by 1 o'clock, but we'll get back with you. All right, we're going to get started today with a quick update from Dr. Colleen Fillmore on the Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer Program. We did get a positive out of the Finance Appropriations Committee yesterday for the supplemental authority for this program, which is through the USDA, and so she's going to give a quick update.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn, and good morning, everyone. We are happy to be with you today. And as Marilyn said, my name is Colleen Fillmore. I am Superintendent Ibarra's Child Nutrition Director for the USDA programs. And we are going to be talking today about a program called PEBT for Idaho schools, in other words, Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer. And just to give a brief definition, this is when temporary emergency nutrition benefits are loaded on an EBT card, which is also known as a food stamp card. And for a child to be eligible, they have to be at a school that has been closed for at least 5 operating days or reduced hours or attendance for 5 consecutive days. And then the child also has to be at a school that is serving National School Lunch and receive free or reduced price meals under the National School Lunch. Okay, as Marilyn mentioned, Department of Ed is very excited that we did get spending authority yesterday with JSAC. We'll be going, of course, through our next steps for the final approval with that. Just very briefly going to give you the very tight timeline for this program. We're going to be looking at getting school uploads from the schools in May, starting here in a few weeks. Those files that we get from the eligible schools will go over to Health and Welfare, and then DHW will work with their card vendor in getting that information from the card vendor to the families somewhere in July. Do really want to make a note that homeless, as you put information into the software build that we're putting together, we are asking, and you will be getting training on this too, but we are asking for the homeless children to have the local school district to be used for them, and for foster children, the foster liaison for the local school district. We want to make sure that these cards get to those students that really need it. The expiration date for this program is at the end of the federal fiscal year, so more information will be coming very soon, and this is a tight timeline, but we're going to get it done, and it's going to be really good for those students that need this benefit. The next slide will just show you real briefly the team that we have internally for the Idaho PEBT, and please feel free to give any of us a call, an email, anything that we can help you with at any time. We're here for you. It's important to note that not every student is going to be getting the same amount on a PEBT card like they did last spring. This time the program is run very differently. It's much more detailed. And you could have a family with more than one child, and there is a different dollar amount on an EBT card. It depends upon how that child, their learning model at the school that they are attending. So you could have one child that potentially has a dollar amount and maybe another child in the same family that does not get an EBT card. So we have all of this outlined. We have already received all of the calendars from all of the eligible schools. So thank you for that. We do not need any more calendars. If you have an update, you can certainly send that in to us, but we are really appreciative of your really hard work getting that information into us. So the next slide will just briefly show you the different things that we're doing from the superintendent's office. We're building a PEBT website, doing press releases, social media outreach. We're currently working with nonprofits. We are developing a school kit for you to have outreach to the families. And then the next slide will show that we are going to start, we have been doing monthly webinars and town halls, and we already have been talking about PEBT, but we are going to have very focused PEBT webinars and town halls that are starting this month. And then the next slide, we have had some ask us, when will the families first receive their money? Again, just kind of as a repeat, we're looking at schools uploading the information in May, the information going to DHW in June, and the families should start getting their PEBT card in July. Superintendent's office PEBT website has all of this information too. And then the next slide is just a contact slide. So I went through that very, very fast, but again, please feel free to contact us. We're super excited about this program and moving forward, things are going smoothly. So thank you.
Next up is Kevin Whitman. He's going to talk about the learning loss money. I know it's being called other things, but the federal government calls it learning loss, and JFAC has been calling it learning loss. So we're going to stick with that. So I'm going to turn this over to Kevin.
Great, thank you so much. I want to talk a little bit about the different K-4 and K-12 allocation formulas and the reporting requirements associated with those. So for the K-4 allocation, that distribution is based on the number of kindergarten through third grade students who are below grade level on an April IRI administration. So you may notice that is not traditionally when we have a required state administration, although we know many of you do progress monitoring throughout the year. So we are asking if you're interested in this funding that you administer the IRI or participate in that progress monitoring by April 23rd. Now, if you're not able to do that because of timing, we know it is tight, we are going to be able to incorporate IRI data from January 1st, 2021 or later, if necessary, although again, we would prefer to have the most current data possible. And one thing I wanted to mention as well is that the standard spring IRI administration in May is not effective. So even if you participate in April, all districts, all schools still have to participate in that spring IRI administration for their K-3 students. The minimum distribution for this K-4 is going to be $6,000. On the reporting side for this K-4 funding, our overall goal is for students to be at grade level on the IRI by December 2021. And so in the interim, there will be reporting in September on the percentage of students who have made at least 50% of the growth necessary to reach grade level in December. And so this slide just illustrates that. If you're familiar with the IRI, you'll be used to seeing these three-colored tier charts for each month. And this is an example showing the kindergarten to first grade progression from April of one year to December of the next. And we have an example of the average April score for students that we project who would be below grade level and the kind of scale score growth that they would need to make to reach that green section, which is the at grade level in December. So this is just to give you a sense of how that tracking would work. On the K-12 side, the allocation formula there is based on FY 2021 midterm average daily attendance, as well as academic performance. So there's a base distribution component, and that is based on that midterm ADA, and you'll see that there are thresholds in the bullets below here for those who have an ADA below 25, between 25 and 100, and greater than 100. So after that base distribution is done, the funding remaining after that is allocated based on some performance metrics. So we do a percentile ranking of interested LEAs based on the percentage of K-3 students who are not at grade level on the April IRI. So again, though, we can use January data through March data if needed, but we prefer to have that April data. And then we would do a percentile ranking of LEAs based on the percentage of grades 6 through 12 students who are at risk in the March IC data. So we're using both of those data points because we know that some LEAs don't serve K-3, and we know that some LEAs may not have 612, so we want to make sure that they're academic components for both. So we take the higher of those two rankings for each LEA, multiply it by their midterm ADA to get an academic need value. And then we distribute that remainder funds based on the percentage of total statewide academic need that each LEA represents. For the K-12 fund reporting, there are a couple different required components as well as some supplementary ones. IRI performance will be required. Growth from the spring 2021 ISAT administration, which is going on now, to summative interim ISAT assessments in September and December 2021. So this would mean that interested LEAs would need to participate in the interim ISAT assessments in September and December of next year. We're also looking at the number of students who successfully participated in a credit recovery course over the summer or fall, and the successful completion of any intervention for students at risk for not making standard grade progression. Those are the required elements, and there are also some supplementary ones. One is the change in the percentage of students who are chronically absent, and the other is a locally selected school or district metric for addressing learning loss. And in red, I have a note on this slide that both those required and supplementary metrics will require LEA reporting beyond our existing IC data. You may notice that these are things we do not necessarily collect right now. So there is a reporting component of this from the LEAs to the SDE for these metrics.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julie Oberle, and I am Superintendent Ibarra's Chief Financial Officer for Public Schools. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022 funding for the governor's K-4 and K-12 learning loss programs that were included in House Bill 356. House Bill 356 is the appropriation bill for the Public School Division of Children's Programs. And please note that while JFAC has appropriated these dollars, the bill must still pass both the House and the Senate and be signed into law by the governor to become effective. So sections 12 and 15 of House Bill 356 cover the governor's K-4 learning loss fund. $5 million was appropriated for fiscal year 2021, with spending authority reappropriated in the same amount for fiscal year 2022. An additional $10 million was appropriated for fiscal year 2022, meaning that the overall allocation for K-4 learning loss for the governor's K-4 learning loss is $15 million for those two fiscal years. 1/3 of that amount will be available via the GRA, because these are federal funds, in late May, once, as Kevin discussed, we make those allocations. The remaining 2/3 will be available to your school district or charter school after you've submitted the report due September 15th. Moving on to the governor's K-12 learning loss funds, sections 13 and 16 of House Bill 356 address these dollars. $5 million was appropriated for fiscal year 2021, with spending authority reappropriated for fiscal year 2022. The initial allocation will be available to your school in early May. And remember, this will be an initial allocation because it's assuming that all schools will be participating in the K-12 Governor's Learning Loss Program. If a school chooses to opt out of receiving these funds, then those funds will be reallocated to the participating schools. So if anything, your initial allocation could increase. And another reminder is that reports are required September 15th and December 31st from the department to the legislature on the uses of these funds and the effectiveness of the programs and efforts. Because these are the governor's CFAC funds, these dollars must be incurred or expended by your school district or charter school by no later than December 31st, 2021. Similar to the $98.7 million that was allocated to you last fall by the governor, these funds are subject to the U.S. Department Treasury guidance that apply to those funds. And so you can see there's a link to those requirements. And on this next slide, we have spelled out the 3 requirements that Marilyn Whitney is going to talk to you about now.
Thanks, Julie. I do want to share that these reporting requirements are in the appropriation bill that was approved by JFAC. So these are legislative requirements. I'll also mention that if we put a link to House Bill 356 in the chat, if you look at that bill, then you'll see how they broke out the allocations or the appropriations for the learning loss K through 12, the K-4 piece and then the K-12 piece. So I just want to be very clear that that is how the legislature chose to appropriate these funds, and it is different from the recommendation that the governor made. I also want to just emphasize again, it's a total of $20 million. So they're appropriating $10 million for this fiscal year to be used by June 30, and then reappropriating that $10 million and the additional $10 million. So we continue to get some questions about that, and I just want to be really clear, total of $10 million over the course of the next several months. Deadline to spend is December 31st. Julie mentioned these are funds that came through the Coronavirus Relief Fund that the Governor's Financial Advisory Committee, Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee directed, and they are subject to the U.S. Treasury Department guidance. And just as a reminder, the original CARES Act that allocated these funds to Idaho said that these funds may only be used to cover costs that meet these three criteria. So they have to be COVID related, they have to not have been accounted for in the most recently approved budget as of March 27th, 2020, and they have to be incurred by December 31. There will be a liquidation period where you can continue to draw down the funds for an additional 90 days, but they have to be incurred, which means spent by December 31st of 2021. I do want to just mention that we will have an application for these funds, for your allocation of these funds out to you next week so that you can provide the information that we will need in order to make your allocation. And it will include the details of the reporting that's included in the legislation that is still pending before the legislature. And we're going to go ahead and move on. I'm going to turn this over to Lisa Colon-Dura to talk about the advanced professional endorsement and those determinations. Again, have been getting a lot of questions about that, and we'll get to your questions as soon as she's finished.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm Lisa Colon-Dura. I'm the Director of Certification and Professional Standards for Superintendent Ybarra. We just thought we would take a few moments as Branwen and I are getting a lot of questions that pertains to advanced professional endorsement. And so I thought we would just pretty much put up a bunch of the questions that we're getting repetitively and see if I cover most of the questions that you have. But before I get started, I just really need to take the opportunity to thank every single one of you, your business managers, your clerks, whoever has been working with myself and Branwen on the information, on the collaboration of getting all of the forms, spreadsheets, questions to us so that we can go ahead and issue those advanced professional endorsements. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for the hard work that you've done the last several, I want to say 4 or 5 weeks on getting this done. So thank you for that. First, I get a lot of questions that says, what are the requirements to earn the advanced professional endorsement? And on this slide, you can see that there are 2 links. One link is to the certification website, which actually includes a link to a document titled Professional Endorsement and Advanced Professional Endorsement Guidance. That actually lists the requirements as per Idaho code. Hopefully, we've listed it in a much more usable fashion than the way code is written, which is why I recommend that you take a look at the guidance document as it kind of breaks it down by each of the qualifications. On page 3 of that document actually also includes requirements for those coming newly out of state. And I say that very specifically because it only applies to those who are getting or receiving an initial Idaho certificate with experience from out of state. If they ever had experience or certification in Idaho before, we cannot use those guidelines. The next one we've been getting lots of questions on is, how do we know who has received the advanced professional endorsement? And so you can actually look them up in a multiple variety of ways. I've listed 4 reports that are typically given to business managers and superintendents of access to those reports. There's the instructional FTE and salary, the people services FTE and salary, the all personnel employment info, and then the education and experience history report. I believe all 4 of those are also downloadable and export into an Excel spreadsheet. So that's one way if you want to be able to take a look at your entire staff to see if they have it. Another option, and this is also a public searchable tool, so if you wanted to share this with your actual staff, they can look themselves up on the certification lookup tool, because if it's been issued, then they'll see that they have the advanced professional endorsement. That might help you be able to allow your staff to be a self-service that if they want to see if they have it, they can take a look at it and look it up themselves as well. So just a couple of things for you to be able to see if they have been issued the advanced professional endorsement. Two more questions we get. What if we find others we want to recommend? We may have found someone that we missed, or we realized that we needed to make a data correction, etc. You can still recommend them. I will continue to process applications that I get every day, forever and ever, basically. And so, but what we need you to do is verify that they have met the requirements, submit that completed advanced professional endorsement recommendation form. I have bulleted 2 items underneath here because one will impact your May foundation payment and the other will impact your July foundation payment. I just looked at Julie to make sure I said that correctly. So I have processed everything that's been on my desk yesterday that I could process. So to make sure that we can include those in the May foundation payment. So Branwen and I have been working together. If we processed it as of midnight last night, going to be done in the May foundation payment. For all the ones that I'm processing now or that will come in the future, that will be processed in the July 2021 foundation payment. And what if you don't know? What if someone comes to you and says, I think I qualify, but I can't tell or I don't know? Call me or email me. I will work through every single one of them with you if needed. It's really helpful for both of us to work through all of those one-off situations because it helps us all understand the kind of support that we need to provide districts, information that we need to provide districts, and hopefully we'll give you another experience with questions that you have that you might get from your staff. So just give me a call. We'll work through each and every one of those. This one I get quite a lot as well, and it's what are the parameters of the district leadership role? Can't we just use the ones we did for leadership premiums? Can't we just use the master educator premiums? Basically, that's up to you as a district. As per Idaho Code 33-1201A, subsection 3C, it actually defines what the district building leadership role is. And here is the piece that I think is really important. It has to be in an Idaho public school. So if you're looking at when they served in a private school in Idaho, or you're looking at when they served out of state in a leadership role, it cannot count. The law actually says Idaho public school. And then they actually identify the types of roles those can be: the instructional specialist or instructional coach, mentor, curriculum or assessment committee member, team or committee leadership position, data coach, but then this is where it's up to you as a district. It also says, or other leadership positions identified by the school district or charter school. When I get questions about this, I always recommend you might want to identify what those positions are and include them in your policy, just so everyone at your district understands what leadership positions you all have identified as district would count towards this district leadership role. And then thinking about the end of this year, we worked really, really hard at getting the ones for issuance of July 1, 2020, but what about the ones that might qualify at the end of this fiscal year or at the end of this school year? We are currently working on updating the career ladder data system, and it's going to include the ability to make recommendations for both the professional endorsement as you've used in the past, but we will be adding a section to it so that it will allow you to make the advanced professional endorsement recommendations as well, because a recommendation from the school district or charter school is one of the requirements. I think it's important to note that you as a district could include other requirements if you want. That's why it says that the district has to provide a recommendation. So if you have additional requirements that you have that you want to use before you make a recommendation, you can do so. The system's going to review the data in the CLDS and the certification data, and if they meet all of the requirements, they will be issued the professional endorsement or the advanced professional endorsement in late summer or early fall. Make sure that your data in the CLDS system is accurate, because it's going to be using that data to determine whether or not they've met the requirements. I know that I've worked with a lot of you on making corrections in the data, so hopefully as you've looked at the ones that impact this year, you also took a look at the ones that might have future impacts if that data wasn't correct. And also, I think it's important to note that just because an individual is listed for a recommendation, it doesn't mean they meet all the requirements. We had to come up with an ability to go ahead and populate the list of potential people that might qualify so that you can go ahead and make that recommendation. Just because you make the recommendation doesn't mean that they have met all the requirements. It's just one of the pieces that we check for. So I think that's important for you to note. And then you also are still going to need to take a look at your staff list, because those that are coming from out of state may have some experience and performance that are not included in CLDS, especially as we talk about professional endorsement. So if they have experience and you have the documentation that they've met the requirements, you can still complete a recommendation form for them, because they may not populate on the recommendation list in the CLDS system. And then my last frequently asked question, as Branwen and I like to say, is will a person move backward if they don't meet movement criteria? The answer is no. Once they are in a rung or cell, they will not move backwards. So if you had someone that's placed on the AP1 in 2020, 2021, and they do not meet the requirements to move for the next fiscal year, they will stay as an AP1 at the previous year's funding allocation. That means they will be held at the funding allocation for the 2020-2021 school year. I'm hoping I said that accurately. So basically, if they don't meet the criteria this year, they will stay at the same allocation next year as an AP1, but for 2020, 2021. Those are the ones that we came up with that seem to be the most common questions from everyone. And so I guess we'll just turn it back over to you guys.
All right, thanks, Lisa. We are going to get to your questions now. One thing I want to clarify on the learning loss money and the Treasury guidance, I'm going to apologize for the U.S. Treasury Department. I'm not sure why, because their guidance that governs that coronavirus relief funding is very confusing. We have gotten some questions about what does it mean that it's not been previously budgeted as of March 27th of 2020. And their follow-on guidance said that provides a spending baseline, but that can be carried forward to cover payments from the fund moving forward. So the spending baseline carries forward to a subsequent budget year if the fund recipient enters a different budget year after March 27th, 2020. So what does that mean? That means these still have to be unbudgeted funds. All right, we're going to get to your questions. I know there was a question early on about the ESSER II funds not being in the GRA yet and what that means. And what that means is that appropriation bill has not yet been passed. It was passed by the Appropriations Committee, but it still has to be passed by the full House and Senate and be signed by the governor. And I don't know how much you all have been keeping track of what the legislature's been doing, especially on the House side the last few days, but yesterday they voted down the first public schools budget, well, not the first, I think the third. The facilities budget bill did pass, but yesterday the teachers division was up and it failed on a tie vote in the House, which means it has to go back to JFAC. There are, at this point, still 4 public schools budgets, including the budget that has the spending authority for ESSER II, that have not been acted on by House, Senate, or the governor yet. And so we will not be able to make those funds available to you until those bills are final and that spending authority is final. Go ahead.
Okay, the first question is from Jen Johnson. What fund number account code should be used for the learning loss dollars?
This is Julie. We don't have a specific fund number assigned to these dollars. Whatever fund number you use, keeping in mind that they are federal dollars, you need to be able to track the expenditures and do reporting on those dollars. You're more familiar with what funds you are using and not using. So I would recommend a federal fund, and that would be the extent of our recommendation. Oh, and revenue code 445-900 should be used.
The second question is from Randy. Are these funds going to show up in our district's single audit report as a pass-through grant?
We may need clarification on who or what that's regarding, whether that's PEBT or ESSER 2 money. So if you can put some clarification in there, Randy, we'll get back to your question. We'll go on to the next one.
The third one is from Anthony Haskett. On the learning loss funds, is the interim ISAT summative both CAT and PT? Additionally, is this limited to students who participated, or is this for all students in the school?
Thank you, Anthony. This is Kevin responding here. For the interim ISATs next year, we are going to have the shortened interim comprehensive assessments available again as well. So you could have students participate in both the CAT and PT portion if you prefer, or we can also use the shortened version, which only has the CAT and doesn't have any hand scoring. Since those produce scores on the same scale score and proficiency levels, we're able to use either of those. Whichever one would be preferable. In terms of the students we'd be looking at, we would take the results for the entire school, and that's what we'd be reporting out.
The next question is from Kristen Foss. What is the turnaround time from submitting to getting an answer on the JOP form application to spend funds on capital expenditures?
Hi, Kristen. This is Karen C. We have a 24-hour turnaround goal for those capital expenditure pre-approvals.
Colleen, I think this one is for you from Doug. 5 days of closure beginning when? This year?
Hi, Doug. Yes, this program starts in August of 2020, and it could have been 5 consecutive days or 5 consecutive partial days anytime during the school year. So it could have been beginning last August, or it could have been where you were face-to-face all year long, and just last month you went 5 consecutive days without being face-to-face or 5 partial days. So it could be any time this last year.
The one from Wendy Lee, what are the qualification dates for this program, the fiscal year, eligible children and families?
The same first part of your question, Wendy, I think I did just answer. The second part, the fiscal year eligible children and families, again, it is this year. We did talk about that already. Does need to be a child who is either on direct cert, free and reduced, CEP, or provision 2 breakfast and lunch.
And it looks like Randy did clarify down a little bit further on his question. He said school nutrition fund, so.
Okay, Randy, this is Colleen. If I'm understanding your question correctly on PEBT, the money goes to the families on a PEBT card. And so the money does not go directly to the schools. And if I'm not answering your question, please feel free to give me a call.
The next one is from Jonathan Gillen. Concerning the reports that are available to confirm employee status for the APE, are those reports updated now based on information we have sent in? For example, will we be able to see our employees and which ones have the AP status if I was to pull the report today, or do I need to wait until May payment is processed?
Hi, this is Lisa. Jonathan, I think there's actually 2 answers to the question. The first answer to the question is, if you see a date, there's a column in those reports indicated date advanced professional endorsement issued. That date is absolutely current. So if there's no date in that field, it means that they have not been issued the advanced professional endorsement. As far as the placement on this career ladder, where it says the salary, I think it's called career ladder placement is the title, I believe, of that. I believe Brandwin will be working on that right now, which is why the date from April 13th is moving forward. So she's currently working on that to make sure that their placements are accurate. So the one thing I can say is this: if they have the advanced professional endorsement they will be placed as at an AP1. So I think the data that you want to double check to make sure if they have the advanced professional endorsement is the column titled Date Advanced Professional Endorsement Issued.
Next question is from Shane Pratt. With the voting down of the K-12 budget yesterday, what would be your recommendations for us to move forward with the budget? Do we go flat, same as last year? Do we need to wait?
So I'll take that one. This is Marilyn. Shane, I think you've got to wait, and I hope there will be a quick resolution, but like I said, the administrators, the operations, the children's programs, and the central services budgets are all still pending in front of the House, as well as teachers division, which was voted down yesterday. So I know that's not a great answer for you all, but until they've acted, we can't tell you anything final.
The next question is from L. Hubbard. So don't put the learning loss funds in our 2021-2022 budget.
That is correct. According to the legal guidance we have gotten based on U.S. Treasury Department's latest information that they released this year.
Lisa Hall is wanting more information on when ESSER 3 funds expire.
This is Marilyn again, and I'll tell you what we told some superintendents earlier today, which is ESSER 3 extends potentially through 2025 if there's a tidings amendment and a tidings waiver. So I believe that based on our conversations with legislators and with JFAC and what they have said, that they want to make sure that that money stretches over those years. And so they are reluctant to appropriate it all up front. That being said, we do not know what they plan to do. I will tell you that this morning, the Appropriations Committee did pass a bill that will now go to the House and Senate that prohibits the governor from non-cognizing these funds. And so I think, as with the last answer, we're going to have to wait and see what the legislature does. And so things are very much up in the air. We felt the letter from U.S. Department of Ed was quite clear, but we're working with the legislature to make sure that you get these funds, and we'll just continue to do that, and we'll keep you updated as much as we can.
Nancy Landon, can a district choose to only accept the K-4 learning loss money?
Nancy, this is Kevin. Yes, since they are separate buckets, separate allocations, you can choose to only go for the K-4, only the K-12, or apply for both.
The next question, Lisa, how do we move forward with issuing 2021-22 contracts in May, June to those on or recommended for the AP rung if it's not finalized until after a review at the state after the district recommends the placement?
Yeah, this is Lisa. That is a question that we're getting, and I guess that the best answer I could answer to that, or guidance for that, is that changes in contract and payment in your salary schedule could always change over the summer in general. Coursework that people complete during the summer has impact on it. So when people ask me about that, I always advise two things. One, you might want to seek your own legal counsel as advice, but second, what I know some districts and charter schools have done is when they are issuing the contracts for this year, for next year, they're only using the current placement, and then in fall, they will readjust those depending upon what happens to see if they've met all the requirements. That's the only thing that I can try to suggest.
Another question from Randy. Do the current year changes get approved by the legislature?
Hi, Randy, this is Julie. Hello, everybody, not just Randy. The biggest change for fiscal year 2021 that we're still waiting for is what the distribution factor will be. Right now, current law is $27,556. That was, JFAC approved a change in and it's captured in House Bill 355, which is the 22 operations bill, but it includes a section for fiscal year 2021. So that amount will be $22,810 for fiscal year 2021, and it's only after House Bill 355 is approved by the House and the Senate and signed into law by the governor that those changes for 21 will be in effect.
The next question is from E. Holden. The teachers are saying the advanced professional endorsement amount is being sent directly to them. Can you clarify, is this used to just increase our average salary used on the salary-based apportionment, or is it sent to them directly?
That's the simple question. No, it is not being sent directly, and Julie might have some additional information to add. I think where there might be some confusion is there's the Master Educator Premium that was done in previous years that is no longer in effect this year, other than the ones who were previously awarded that. The Master Educator Premium was to go directly to those teachers who earned the Master Educator Premium. The Advanced Professional Endorsement is to be treated exactly how the professional endorsement is. It's a placement on career ladder for funding allocation determination. I think I would be doing Brandwin justice by saying it has to do with an average, an FTE, to determine the average salary-based apportionment funding per FTE. Okay, I think I got it. Thank you. Okay. Brandwin has taught me well, I guess. So no, that's about a funding allocation. What school districts and charter schools choose to pay their folks is a negotiated item.
Katie Ebner, did I hear correctly that half of the governor's learning loss money will need to be spent prior to June 30th?
So this is Marilyn. No. So 10 million has been appropriated for this year, but it was reappropriated for next year in addition to the other 10 million. So what they were trying to do is make funding available between now and June 30 for those of you who want to offer summer programs that would be occurring in June, but then they also want to make the full amount available next year in the event that it does not get spent before or by June 30.
Rolling Hills, if we have until December of 2021 to spend learning loss funds, how do we only add it to the 2020-2021 budget?
Oh, this is Julie. I'm not sure how to answer this question, honestly, because we have to remember the governor's learning loss funds are subject to U.S. Treasury guidance, and they cannot be part of your budget. I don't think they can be part of this year's budget or your fiscal year 2022 budget if you are going to spend them in accordance with U.S. Treasury guidelines.
Lisa, it looks like these two questions from Summer Worley and Susan Bucher are the same. So they're wondering, once a teacher meets the requirements for the advanced professional endorsement, they stay on that level regardless of whether they meet the requirements in the future?
So hi, this is Lisa again, everyone, and that is a great question, and I do think it answers the one from Plummer Worley as well. So I think the easiest way to answer this question is the advanced professional rung is treated the same way the professional rung is. So once they earn the advanced professional endorsement, they will be placed on the AP1 cell. In order to move along the rung, in order to get to the next cell, because next year they're actually going to have an AP2 cell. We don't have one this year because no one could be on that cell. But next year they'll have an AP2 cell. If they meet the requirements to move to the AP2 cell, they'll move to that cell. If they don't, they will stay at the AP1 cell. So they're not going to go back. Once they get it, if they never earn it again, they never move from an AP1, they will actually stay at an AP1 at the 2020-2021 funding allocation. I mean, unless there's a new law change.
And then there's just another clarification on the learning loss funds from Rolling Hills again. How do we track it if it's not in our budget?
You'll be pulling down, this is Julie, you'll be pulling down the governor's learning loss funds through the GRA, the grant reimbursement application. So while they may not be in your specific budget for the entire year, you're going to have a spending plan for these dollars. They just haven't been made a part of your official budget.
Lisa, another one from Anthony Haskett. If we have an out-of-state teacher who gets placed on the AP1 cell, will they be able to move to the AP2 cell if they do not have the 3 to 5 years leadership in an Idaho public school?
Anthony, that's actually a brilliant question. So I'm really, really happy you asked that. So the requirement of the district leadership role of 3 of the previous 5 years in Idaho public school was only to earn the advanced professional endorsement. Once they get the endorsement, the only criteria that you have to look at to see if they can move along that rung is the advanced professional compensation rung criteria, which is overall proficient or higher on the summative evaluation, no components rated as unsatisfactory or basic, overall distinguished in domain 2 or 3, and 75% or higher student achievement. If they met all of those in 2020, 2021, they will move to the AP2 for the next fiscal year. So in short, once they have the advanced professional endorsement, they technically do not need to serve in a district leadership role to maintain that rung.
Another follow-up to the learning loss funding question from Jonathan Gillen. It sounds like we should not budget for the learning loss funding for 21-22. What about the dollars we received already concerning the CRS funding, the dollars spent this fall? As we look to make year-end budget adjustments, should we not include that in our budget adjustments as of year-end, or should we?
Hi, Jonathan. This is Karen C. So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking if the CRF funds such as special distribution, blended learning, and so forth should be in your budget for this year. Those funds need to be drawn down to GRA by the end of June. And I believe the State Department has like a June 25th date. So those should not be part of your budget for this year.
Guy W, any update on how units will be calculated in fiscal year 22, ADA versus ADM? How will that impact unit protection?
So this is Julie. I'll jump in on this one. All indications that we have right now is that the temporary rule in place for fiscal year 2021 using full-time equivalent enrollment to calculate average daily attendance and therefore support units will expire upon adjournment. The state board will likely renew that through June 30th. And then beginning July 1 for fiscal year 2022, we will go back to how average daily attendance has always been calculated, and that's using the 2.5 and the 4 hours. So old rules for fiscal year 2022. When we calculate protection, that is going to stay the same. We're going to use average daily attendance, aggregate attendance information for that. So for next February's payment, we are going to look at what was your aggregate attendance for fiscal year 2021. That aggregate attendance amount is going to be based on full-time equivalent enrollment because that is what we used in fiscal year 2021. We will compare that amount to 97% of your current year, which will be fiscal year 2022 aggregate attendance using the 2.5 and the 4 hours.
A couple more questions about Budgeting and the General Fund, Julie. Katie Ebner. Guidance for the CRF special distribution from fall was to code revenues and expense to general fund. We just heard from Julie that the CRF learning loss funds should be a federal fund code. Should we move the fall CRF distribution to a federal fund code?
So this is Julie. You can leave those CRF funds from the fall in your general fund. They need to be identified as federal dollars. And then these CRF funds that are going to come to you as learning loss funds can be included in your general fund. A lot of schools have said it's easier for them to track these dollars using a federal fund code or fund number, and that's just fine too. Wherever you code these dollars, you need to be able to track them separately from the other funds within that overall fund, and you need to make sure you are using revenue code 445-900, which would be other federal revenue.
One last question from Barbara. We have a requirement to publish expenditures as compared to budget by October of every year. What I'm hearing is that our expenditures will greatly exceed budgeted amounts as all of these special federal dollars are not to be budgeted, correct?
So I'm going to throw out a general question to those that are sitting around me today and ask you if the Treasury guidance says that these expenditures for whether it's the $98.7 million in the fall or the governor's funds for learning loss right now, if they are not in your current budget, they're eligible. So what if when you set your budget for 22 in June, you amend your budget for 21 to reflect reality, which so many of you do? Well, at the time you spent the money, they weren't in your budget. So it seems like it's okay to revise your budget for fiscal year 2021 to reflect what you're really doing. I don't even know how to answer a question on 22. I guess when you set your 22 budget, don't look at what your allocation is. I mean, what a terrible thing to say. So I don't know what to tell you about 22.
And this is Marilyn. I'll just say that, Treasury guidance has been updated ongoing, and because we still have from now until December 31 to spend those funds, it's possible that we'll get additional guidance. We can also reach out to them and ask for additional guidance and explain the situation. There have been times in the past when they've been able to make some changes to that guidance that has been helpful. So, we will do that and see if we can get you and us a better answer to this question. We'll answer a couple more questions. I saw one in the chat that I just want to make sure we do address, which was on the learning loss funds, the $20 million, is that just for students who score below basic? And yes, it is. So it is not the same as your other reading intervention money. It is for students just below basic. I believe the legislature's intent was to focus on those students who are scoring at the lowest level, which is also why the K-12 money is being allocated in part based on at-risk students.
Okay, Lachelle Wilson, in terms of career ladder movement and funding and leadership premiums, is it safe to assume that for fiscal year 2021, this is a given? We will be receiving funding according to where they should have been placed this year, and there is no chance that the freeze that we placed on everyone will stand. There have been no bills created to change this decision. The only thing that we are waiting on is a decision based on the discretionary support unit amount. Am I understanding that correctly?
This is Marilyn. I never want to say in absolute terms. There have been no bills introduced that would change those distributions, and we do not expect that to occur at this point in the session. However,
Nancy Landon, she has two. So just to clarify, protection for next year will be compared to average enrollment this year compared to average ADA next year?
That is correct. I just want to remind everybody that the definition for average daily attendance this year uses full-time equivalent enrollment. The average daily attendance definition will revert for fiscal year 2022 to using the 2.5 and the 4 hours.
Nancy has another one. She's also concerned about MOE calculations being done on average enrollment and then being compared to prior year MOE calculations done on ADA.
Nancy, that's a concern we also have.
I think the rest are just comments, and we're a little bit over. And so I want to thank you all again for being here. We will make the recording available to all of you. We'll send out the slides to you as well. Please know that all of the staff here at the department, as well as the superintendent, are here to help you. We know how confusing this is. We know it's a lot. And so please reach out to us. Let us know what we can do to help you. We will, I'm not sure we'll have a webinar next week. It'll partially depend on whether or not we've seen any legislative action on some of these appropriations bills and if we have additional information to share, but we will be scheduling another one. And so please let us know what we can do to assist you. Thanks, everybody.